Great. Hi, this is Sally Flashburger. I'm with the Wisconsin Board for People with Developmental Disabilities, and we're here for another Living Well Wednesday. We're excited today to continue our series for National Caregiver Month. And just very quickly, I'll let you know who's here with us presenting today. We have our own Caitlin. She's going to start us off and give us a little bit of information about National Caregiver Month, but also talk about her experience as a sibling. Then we'll hear from Stephanie Prim. She's the executive director at Love Inc., and she is a sibling of a person with a disability. And then we will hear from Anne Karch. She is on the board with Love Inc. and is what we call an aging caregiver, which I myself am quickly running up to that goal. And then we'll hear from Harriet Redmond. She is the executive director for Wisconsin Sibs, and she's also a parent. So lots of good information today. We'll hear a little bit about everybody's stories. So I'm just, you can post comments in the chat if you're on our Zoom or on the Facebook. Any questions you might have for our presenter, we're happy to have them answer. So I'll turn it over to Caitlin.
Yeah, hi, good morning, everybody. So like Sally said, we're in the middle of National Family Caregiver Month, and the Board for People with Developmental Disabilities has been sharing some really great stories on their Facebook page, but they're also sharing an event, and I'm going to go ahead and put that link both in the Facebook and in the chat here on Zoom. And in this event, it's a way to connect to other family caregivers, and they're focusing on different topics each week. This week, the focus is on family caregivers of varying ages, so young siblings all the way up to grandparents and aging parents. And so part of what they're doing every week is asking you to share your stories. And each time you do share your story, you're entered for a drawing. They're giving away some gift cards. So we definitely wanted to share with the family caregivers out there that there was some fun opportunities to connect with other family caregivers. So I'll go ahead and put those links in both the chat here on Zoom and on Facebook Live so that you guys can take a look and see and find ways to share your stories. And then, like Sally said, I am excited to be here, particularly today because I am also a sibling. I don't get to talk about it very much, usually in my job at Living Well, though Kelsey, my sister, influences quite a lot of how I approach the work that I do. We are only 15 months apart. I'm just slightly older than her. So we have a very close relationship, and we talk a lot about the fact that our relationship with each other is probably the longest relationship we're ever going to have with anybody. I can't remember a time when Kelsey wasn't in my life, and I don't anticipate knowing a time for quite some time yet where that isn't true still. So she really is the longest relationship I'm going to have, and it is a special bond, but it's also a responsibility in its own way because we've always navigated the world together. So, that has definitely changed as we've gotten older. I think we are learning to navigate being adults now, and that comes with its own new set of challenges. But there are some very true sibling things that still happen. There's lots of sibling competition, and all of the things that I also experienced with my younger sisters who are neurotypical. So I'm excited to connect with other family members all the time, and in particular other siblings. I was quite a bit older before I started to reach out to sibling communities and get their perspective, and it certainly changed a lot of my thinking once I was connected to the community, because you feel like you're reinventing the wheel all the time. You feel like you're alone, and that the sibling feelings that you're having, or the sad days that you're having, or the frustrating things that you're experiencing are your own, and that you shouldn't share that, and you shouldn't feel comfortable expressing those feelings, and it can really build up inside of you, and that was not healthy for our relationship in any way. And so reaching out and finding siblings and starting to navigate this path with more people has been really beneficial for Kelsey and I and our relationship. And it means that I'm a better supporter to her, but also just a better sibling to her. So I think that I'll definitely jump in with experiences if I can relate to some of the things that other people are going to talk about. But I think Stephanie also has a very interesting sibling story to share, and I definitely want to give her time for that. So.
All right, well, thank you, Caitlin, and thank you, Sally, for the invitation to join you this morning for Living Well Wednesday. I am excited to get to share my sibling story, and always, I love talking about my brother. My brother is 19 months older than me. So Caitlin, I thought he and I were close in age, but you've got me beat by a couple of months there. So we are very, very close in adulthood. And I think there are parts of our experience that are hopefully unique, because there's some not great parts of my sibling journey. But I think one thing that if there's parents listening to this, that I want you to maybe take away from my example and my brother's example is that as parents, I think there's a lot of pressure to be perfect or do things right for the siblings of your kid with a disability. And if anything, I hope you hear me and hear that being perfect or doing it all right is not required for your kids to turn out okay. So I and my brother we've been through a lot together, and which I'll talk about. And we, like I said, we both have really good lives. We're both happy in adulthood, and we have a good relationship with one another, despite everything that kind of came up along the way of our journey. But so my brother, Jeremy, he has autism. He also struggles with mental health issues and a mishmash of other things, depending on the day. But primarily he identifies as somebody with autism. And in childhood, we were always quite close, like most siblings are, I think. From an early age, I think really as a function of being the little sister, I think I started to really perceive and understand the world through my brother's eyes and through his experiences. Not only were we navigating the world together, like Caitlin said, we were also, or I was certainly learning about the world through his reflections of it and through how he processed the world. And so to this day, that's given me a very unique perspective on the experiences and the way that his brain processes things. I don't want to say people with autism in general, because there's no way to generalize that, but certainly I have always very closely understood where his mind might go and what he might be thinking. And that was something that my parents really valued. And I want to say, it was, as a child, right, it was a way for me to feel helpful and feel needed. And, that good, bad, or otherwise, right, my parents kind of fostered that in me. Our parents split up when we were pretty young, which is a pretty common experience for children who have a sibling with a disability. That sometimes it puts a lot of strain on a marital relationship. And so after my parents split up, I ended up in a lot of ways being both a sister and a caregiver to my brother. I had a lot of responsibility for him, even prior to age 10. And it's a part of our story. It's, again, hopefully not something that a lot of people experience or a lot of sibling experience, but it's my story and my experience. As teenagers, my brother and I clashed a lot. We didn't always get along. We had a lot of disagreements. There was a lot about him that I found frustrating. If he were here, he would say that as a teenager, I was kind of a B word. And he would probably be pretty correct in saying that. So I never claimed to be perfect. And then we got into our 20s, and my brother was kind of rushed into becoming more independent than he was ready for, which I think is something a lot of parents I talk to err on the opposite end of that spectrum and are more cautious about that, which is good. For my family, for my parents, what made the most sense was to kind of force Jeremy into his own apartment at the age of 22. And it didn't go well for him. He very quickly decompensated and ended up needing to be in the hospital in the psychiatric unit for 2.5 weeks. And at that point, the conversation in my family was essentially, let's let Stephanie figure this out, and kind of help Jeremy navigate this situation, because as parents, we're at a loss. We don't know what to do. We've clearly screwed this up. We don't know how to fix it. So that was an interesting set of conversations to have with my parents at the age of 20. And again, that's good, bad, otherwise, right? They would not claim to be perfect people, but that was what they felt was the right thing to do at that point. And I loved my brother, and I loved him then. And what I said to him during that time period was that we were going to be a team. He and I would figure it out together. That I wasn't going to come in and be a quasi-parent person. I was just going to be the person in the family that he could count on to be in his corner. And one thing that really stands out to me from that time period is, as a college student, I was working, I had jobs, and I worked with a couple of families as a respite provider, because I understood how to be that thing. And so when my brother was hospitalized, those families showed me the most compassion and kindness of almost anybody. I mean, everybody in my world showed me a lot of compassion and kindness during that situation, but there was something really helpful about these other families who really deeply got it from a gut place, from a soul place. And that was really helpful for me. And it also led me to the resources and things that made my brother's transition back to his apartment livable and possible. And so, one of the things, like I said, Jeremy and I were a team, and it was always his team. But at that point in his life, I kind of became the coach for the team. And to this day, that's kind of the role I play in the family is, with Jeremy, there's, everybody's kind of doing their part. We were able to kind of deputize our parents in different ways after some time had passed to help Jeremy and be team players. But whenever we need a coach, right, whenever there's a play to call or whatever, it's typically been me. So as I grew up, right, a few years later, I got the opportunity to work in this field as a professional. I finished college and was able to be part of the founding of an organization called Love Dane at the time. It's now Love Inc. And I'm now the director, but at the time, we were just a small group of families trying to figure out how to make life great for our loved ones who were in their 20s. And one of the great things that was able to happen very quickly for my brother is that his world really expanded outside of the family, right? He started to have relationships with other people with disabilities. Through the Bridge Builder project at Love, he was able to develop connections in the community. He's in 2009, he joined the Madison PC Users Group, and he's still an active member of that organization. He's actually on the board for that organization, and it's a big part of his social life. And that's not a disability group; it's just a group of guys who like computers. And he needed some support to get there, and it definitely wasn't going to be me, because that's a really weird thing for an adult person to have your sister come with you to help you connect to other people, especially when I could care less about computers. I mean, I like having them and all, but I don't want to build a Raspberry Pi in my spare time. So that's a joke for any computer lovers out there. I can see everyone else blinking at me in confusion. And so time progressed. Jeremy and I are both in our late 30s now. And like I said, we're both really happy. We have good lives. And one of the things that has been really important in recent years is starting to have conversations about life without our parents, right? They're both in their late 60s. They probably, Sally, are in that definition of aging caregiver. And this has been on my mind, obviously, for the last 20 years, right? Ever since my parents told me it was my turn, I've felt like, okay, so let's really figure out what that means and how to get Jeremy what he needs, and have things be kind of a smoother transition for him rather than a crisis when one of our parents passes away. And so through Love Inc., we have this workshop series called Fearless Future, which I think Anne is going to talk about a little bit today as well. But it's an opportunity for families to get together and put on paper information about their loved one with a disability that then can be relied on in the future by other caregivers, other non-parental caregivers. And it's, you know, all the basic information, right? Who's their iris consultant and who's their doctor and that kind of stuff. But it's also things that you wouldn't have in a formal service system information booklet, right? It's what do they like to do on their birthday? How do they celebrate the holidays? What are other important days or experiences that they have? So it's a big undertaking, but because it's virtual, my parents aren't both in Madison, and so we've been able to all be together on Zoom this time around, so we can do it together. So for folks out there who are more far flung, if you're interested in more information about that, I'm sure there will be links or something to click on somewhere in the chat to find out more information on our website. So unless there's any specific questions for me, I will wrap my part up.
I don't see any specific questions at the moment, but we may come back to you. I'm gonna thank you so much, and I will post the link for Love in the chat in just a second. And we're gonna move to Anne, and Anne's gonna talk a little bit about her perspective as an aging caregiver. Sorry, Anne.
That's
okay.
Okay.
Give it a different name.
It's all right. Older. Just say older.
Older. More wise.
Older and wiser. There you go. I don't know how wise. So my husband, Paul, and I are 64, and our daughter, Rachel, is 34. So in our family, there are 30 years in the generations. My mother was 30 when she had my brother. I was 30 when I had Rachel. So other families have shorter generations, maybe 20 years, maybe 22, 25. So it does make us older when our children get older. And Paul and I were commenting recently that with Rachel being 34 and we being 64, we've actually been caring for her more than half our lives now, and that will continue to be true. she is our first child. We have two others. We have a daughter, Lydia, who's 32, and a son, Chaz, who's 29. And Chaz is married, so we have a daughter-in-law, Sally. And it was pretty obvious very rapidly that Rachel had a disability when she was born, because she started having seizures when she was about 3 months old. And from there, we just happened to be fortunately living in a city, San Diego, with a great genetics lab. So they were able to see her genetic chromosome abnormality really and identify it when pretty much they could not find us another family who had a child like that. And my instinct always is to get support, not monetary support, but emotional support. So we just couldn't find anybody. So we kind of were on our own for a while, but in the preschool program, I found some other moms and all different disabilities for our children, but we formed a support group, and that group has been really key to providing, I always say it saved my sanity. And even though we moved away from San Diego 26 years ago, I'm still in touch with those women, and some of them are my closest friends. And so we spent a lot of time talking about siblings when we were in that group. And of course, people were like Stephanie, younger siblings of someone with a disability. People were like Rachel, older sibling is the one with the disability. And I don't know that everybody in our group agreed, but when Paul and I talked, we really wanted to be sure that our other children understood that while we hoped they would be involved in Rachel's life, we did not want them to feel responsible for her. We wanted to make sure that we set up a framework of people to care for her so that they could be involved as much as they wanted, but not feel that it was a burden, because we felt, we chose to have children, and you take the responsibilities that come with that, but siblings don't choose their own siblings. So it felt like we didn't want to make them that way. So for a long time, we had a little group set up that was going to take over if anything happened to us. And we had a little letter that we wrote up every 5 years to explain what we were expecting. And Paul's brother was always the titular head of this council that would convene and take care of Rachel if something happened to us. And one time we handed this letter to our kids, and I think Lydia was probably 22 at the time. And she said, "What, you don't think I can do it?" So, okay. So Lydia has stepped up and asked to be the next guardian if something happens to us. But we wanted that to be her choice. And I think it's pretty well documented that siblings of people with disabilities, a lot of them go into the helping profession. So Stephanie in social work is a perfect example. Our other daughter has a master's in public health, and our son has been in teaching and things like that. So that's not surprising that they're caring and compassionate people, because our daughter took a course on caregiving in college, and she said, "Mom, none of those other kids have any idea what caregiving is." She said, "I know, because she's been watching it and doing it." So that was just kind of an interesting aspect. So because my husband's a lawyer, he set up this whole thing, and he's been very dedicated to making sure that we had enough. We're like overinsured with life insurance and things to make sure that there will be money to take care of Rachel when we're gone. And we really focused pretty heavily on that. And it wasn't until we had the opportunity to take the Fearless Future workshop that we realized, whoa, there's a whole bunch of other stuff that we've never written down. What size shoe does Rachel wear? Where do we usually buy those shoes? What's her birthday cake like? What songs does she like? Just that kind of thing. And she has a whole team of caregivers who work with her. So on any given day, there are 8 people who could probably answer that question, but we don't know what will happen in the future and who might be stepping in to take over. And our daughter lives in another city, and we don't expect her to move to Madison. So she'll be coordinating the work of people here in Madison. And another interesting thing that came up in the workshop was kind of mapping the sort of systems of support for your child with a disability, and creating kind of a network map. And I've just started sketching it out for class today, but you start getting groups of people in, and there's family, but then there are caregivers, and then there's church, and then there is work, and for kids who are younger, there's school, and there are all the health and medical people, and it's a pretty big web. And it's good to look at that way. And if you're a person with a disability too, you want to think about where all your support is, because it isn't just, you don't want it to just be in one person, because if something happens to that one person, you want to have other people you can rely on. So that's been a really interesting experience, and we're really happy about that. And as it happens, I'm working with an organization for the chromosome abnormality Rachel has, along with other rare epilepsy groups. And we're all trying to come up with some sort of a guide for families where they're getting older. And of course, this pandemic has frightened people. So people who are younger, who are not aging parents, who are regular parents, they realize, oh, I really need to write all this stuff down or put it somewhere so that someone can access it should I become sick. And maybe they're not going to die, but they might be incapacitated for a while, and you need people to be able to step in and take over. So that I think has been very important. And in a way, even though it's been a ton of work, I will say, I don't know if Stephanie's found that to be true. It's a lot of work. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, we got through the medical section, but now we're doing the legal section. And, it's a lot, it takes a lot of forward thinking, but then I think that's what you do when you're the family of somebody with a disability. You can't take anything for granted. And we think Rachel has a totally great life. We're really pleased with how her life has worked out, but we want to make sure that we have enough little guardrails up that her life will continue like that, whether we're here or not. And that does take thinking and planning and sharing with other people what you want and what you're thinking, and letting them contribute too. So we're fortunate that we have a couple of caregivers who have children of their own, or have not cared for Rachel in quite a while, but they're still involved in her life. And our main thing has been, I was telling Sally, since we are older, our motive is always find people who are younger than we are to be involved here. So a lot of the people we're sharing our plans with are Rachel's age or a little older, because we figured they're the most likely to be there for her when we're not. And we've got a lot of friends our own age who love her, and most of our family, we're the younger siblings in our families. So most of our family's older. So they care about her, but they're unlikely to be able to care for her if we can't. I always used to say, if your kid is still in school, find those aides who were helpful, and Rachel's speech therapist was always her biggest champion. So, you can find people who are interested and concerned and care to sort of pull into the network. The people we've asked if they would be willing to sort of officially be in her network have all said they would be honored. So that's nice. What else did I want to say? I don't know what else I wanted to say. Sorry, I'm just drawing a blank. I think I've covered everything that Sally asked me to, so.
Yeah, and I think you said that Rachel is living independently.
Oh, yeah. I didn't explain about where she lives. So Rachel lives in an intentional community. That means that the people who live there have decided to live next door to each other or in the same building with each other. So it's a group of about 40 units. I'd say 30 of them are in two big apartment buildings. So they're just like condos or apartments in a building. And then Rachel lives in one of the 7 freestanding houses that are part of that. And co-housing is a Danish concept to build a community on a city block. And if you were building from scratch, you would actually put the front doors of the houses in towards the center of the block and the back doors on the street. The idea being that you want people to get together. And before the pandemic. It was a great place for gathering. We had community meals twice a week, and I often helped cook those. It was great for Rachel because her caregivers didn't have to cook that day. They had people to talk to during a meal. As we say, 90 people know Rachel's name and greet her, which is among her favorite things, is to have people say hi, Rachel, to her. And even more fun when she meets somebody like Rachel, named Rachel, then it's really fun. That has been really great. And so she has all these neighbors and they care about her. So we're including people from that community in her network also. They actually had a really great idea when people first moved in.
That community is mixed. It's not just
people. Right. It's not for people with disabilities at all. So there's everything from 2 babies on the way to a 90-year-old grandma who lives with her daughter and grandson. It's just for people who want to be together. So there are people who are maybe a little older than me, whose children are grown and gone, several single women, and their kids are gone. So why should they be rattling around a big old house? Why not be here with people? So you can say, I want to go to a movie. Who wants to go with me? I'm going to ride my bike into the Arb. Who wants to go? And so you have just a community, and then they do all the landscape work and the snow removal and everything. So there are community work days and everybody participates in those. And then everybody's supposed to do a job for the community. So Rachel's job is to deliver eggs. We order from an organic egg farm. And then when the eggs are delivered, she takes a little cart and puts all the eggs in it and delivers it to the families who ordered the eggs that week. And it's just a very neighborly place, I would say. And there were 4 young people with disabilities in the beginning who moved in. And the community said, oh, the way orcas have pods, we should have pods for these people. So they did. And 3 or 4 neighbors said they would be part of Rachel's pod. And we used to have them over for dinner regularly. So they could just kind of keep up on her life a little bit. That's fallen away a little bit. And I think as soon as the pandemic's over, I'm going to push them to restart that because, everybody needs a little bit of support and knowing that people are in your corner.
Right. That is a great way to build those additional supports and that social capital we always talk about.
Right. Exactly. And, Rachel also has autism. She has epilepsy as well, but her developmental delays are pretty intense. So she really functions more on the level of a toddler. So she's not going to just run up and greet people and make friends on her own. We have to sort of facilitate that a little bit and help her. Anybody who works with her grows to love her easily. That's her charm. We have nothing to do with that. But it takes a little bit. Sometimes people aren't sure. When she was little children used to think she was angry at them because she wouldn't answer when they spoke to her. And so we've learned to sort of say, no, she's not angry. She just doesn't talk very much. And then we can get her to talk. So we would help people show that. So that's the plan. And we're actually going to be revealing that to this network tonight. So we'll see what they say.
I'm muted. Thank you. That was excellent. I myself am excited about this program, and our family may be dipping our toe into a similar adventure. So thank you so much for sharing, Anne. All right, I'm gonna turn it over to Harriet. She's gonna talk about SIBS and her organization. I think she's gonna share some slides. Take it away, Harriet.
Sure. Thank you, Sally. And I am the senior member of this panel. Just so you know, I can talk on the aging parent level, or I can talk about siblings. They really do mesh together. And actually, after the presenters so far, I don't have a whole lot to add. the siblings that have spoken have really shared with you what it's like. Those are stories that I've heard many times from lots of siblings that I have the privilege of working with. And Anne and I, boy, we have so much in common. So let me start there, a little bit about my family and how we got here. I'm Harriet Redmond. I live in Appleton, Wisconsin. And my husband and I have 2 children. Christiana is our older one, and Philip is the younger one. He's 28. He has many different kinds of disabilities. It all stems from a chromosomal abnormality that's very rare. His challenges are that he communicates, but he doesn't speak. He is delightful, but he gets frustrated. So he sometimes has behavior that we just have to figure out what he needs, and then we are able to help him out with that. And he lives with us. We too have been seeking that that place he belongs, the place that allows him to be active in the community, because before the pandemic, he was very active in the community, allows him to live somewhat independently, but with the support that he needs. We haven't found that yet, but we have a list of criteria that we're looking for. Philip has his own business. He is known as the Shredman. He's nonverbal, so the sh, and he loves the sound of machinery, grinding machinery, especially like garbage disposals and shredders. And so his motivation in doing his job as the Shredman is to shred documents that makes noise, and he loves that. And before March, he had 6 or 7 different small businesses that he delivered his services. The big advantage for Philip was not a financial gain, but the gain he had in being among the community and making a contribution. That has always been important to us. That's always been important to him, and he loves that. Since the pandemic, he has been at home with us 24/7, 365, or whatever day we're on, 280 or something like that for the pandemic. And he has desperately missed his caregivers. He has several. We use an agency that pick him up in the morning and get him to his jobs, then have some recreation together in the afternoon, and then brings them home. And he misses them. Most of them are his age, and they have fun, and he loves being in the community. So that's really been difficult for Philip. And for a while, he was doing what he could, and that was controlling what he could. One of the things he can control is what he eats. And he doesn't eat when he's not happy, or he's in an environment that is strange to him. And that causes difficulties, not only nutritionally, but that's how he gets his medication for his seizure disorder. So early in the pandemic, he stopped eating. It was impossible to get medication in him without him swallowing something. And the result was he had a seizure that we had to send him to the hospital, which at the time was very scary, not knowing what he might be exposed to there. But he has kind of settled in. We get him out as much as we can, but we're very cautious, of course, as all of our friends who have loved ones with disabilities, we've all been cautious. And then his sister lives in Indiana. She recently had our first grandchild, and that's been so much fun. Philip is not such a fan. The baby takes a little attention away from him, so he is dealing with that, but he prefers the attention on him. But it's delightful to see our family grow in that way. I was also asked to talk about siblings, and Caitlin and Stephanie did such a wonderful job of sharing their stories. I have been listening to siblings for a long time, and actually I'm going to share my screen here, and hopefully you can see this. Let's see if this is going to work.
Yep.
It does? Great.
Yes, just maybe put it on. Yeah, there you go. Perfect.
Okay. Yeah. So over 22 years ago, when the kids were little, I did not intend to start a nonprofit. That was not in my list of things to do. But in pursuing my own need to know how to parent a child with a disability and their sibling, I was digging into what programs are available, what research is available, what information is available, and I just found so little. There was no one talking about the needs of siblings, and I knew that this was going to impact her life. Not only was Philip going to be living with a disability, but his sister was going to be living with his disability as well. So I knew it would have an impact. So I just kept digging in and trying to find things. And one of the things I learned was the impact of being a sibling is comforted or helped when they can meet other siblings. And Stephanie and Caitlin have also spoken to that. So as a result, in getting some programs started, and many of you have probably heard of the program Sib Shop. That's how we got started, and that's still our flagship program for our younger siblings. Found some people around the state that were doing those, and we got those going too. But we also realized, as Caitlin and Stephanie mentioned, this is a lifelong journey. Siblings have the longest relationship with a person with a disability than anyone. So their relationship is really important. And it would be unfair if it was a one-sided support, that not only the person with a disability needs support, but so do their siblings, not only when they're children, but throughout their life. So we started an organization up in the Fox Valley. So we called it the Fox Valley Sibling Support Network. And for many years, that's what the name of the group was, and that's who we focused on. And then more recently, we helped start a national group, and we are the Wisconsin chapter. So we felt like we needed to change our name. So we have become the Wisconsibs organization, and we are the Wisconsin chapter of a national group called the Sibling Leadership Network. Just to give you an idea who's on the screen there, those are some of our siblings. The two in the upper left-hand corner, that's Philip, our son, and his sister, Christiana. So they have been involved in our programs since the beginning. And here's who we serve. We serve young children, teenagers, adult siblings, parents, professionals, volunteers, with our programs, which include a lot of youth and adult programs. We offer Sib Camp. We offer a leadership program for teens who have siblings with disabilities. We operate and grow and benefit by lots of collaborations with other organizations who serve people with disabilities, other organizations that serve the needs of parents, schools. That's our mode of operation, is collaboration. And then we have a website, and I do my best trying to keep up with social media. And then, as I said, we're the founding chapter of the Sibling Leadership Network. We are a not-for-profit 501c3, but we're not tax supported. We're not a United Way agency, and we're not a membership organization. Our perspective is that if you live in Wisconsin, if you know somebody that lives in Wisconsin, if you have a sibling in Wisconsin, if you like Wisconsin, if you like the Packers, that's good enough. You can be a Wisconsin if you have a sibling with a disability. So actually we have many of our participants, they don't live in Wisconsin at all. Like our daughter who lives in Indiana, we have siblings that live in Arizona and California and Texas because they have siblings here in Wisconsin, or they don't have their own chapters, so they participate in our programs. I mentioned to some of the group earlier that recently I did a presentation for siblings of people with disabilities that live in Japan. And so I wanted to give them a perspective of where I lived and where Wisconsibs resided. So I shared with them this map so they got a perspective. And also that Wisconsin is pretty known for their cheese, their beer, Harley Davidson, and all of our beautiful lakes. But we're also known because we have over 600,000 people who live with disabilities, and most of them have siblings that care about them too. We've been around since 1998, and so this is one of our first Sib shops. Actually, my daughter is over here. She's now 31 years old, and one of our employees, this little girl now is 34, and she's one of our employees actually. But over the years, we have served thousands of siblings through various programs. This is what we looked like in late 2019, and we've been doing Zoom programs, so I don't get to get the people all together. But why did we do this? Well, for obvious reasons, I was interested in the welfare of both of my children. But as I learned from others and from my observation and from research, siblings play a lot of roles. You can see their role models, their teachers, their therapists. Often Christiana could get Philip to do something that I couldn't get him to do. And she's a cheerleader for him when he was learning to stand, and that took years. He didn't learn to walk until he was about 10 and a half years old. But siblings are also huge advocates. Even the little kids, they're protectors and advocates for their brothers and sisters, even as small children, 3-4 years old. And siblings are their first friends, their companions, and that lasts their whole lives as well. I heard that with Stephanie's examples of she and her brother. They're still companions. They're still good friends. They have things in common. They know things that nobody else knows in the whole world, other than between the two of them. And they're caregivers. Now, siblings don't always like to take that role. They don't always embrace that word. But even when they're companions and advocates, and even when they're just making that phone call to make sure everything's okay, those are caregiving roles. So whether they just say, I'm just their sister, I'm just their brother, they're still caregivers as well. And I encourage siblings to identify with that, because there are more and more programs, there's more and more support for family caregivers. And as Caitlin mentioned, this is National Family Caregiver Month. And I hope siblings embrace that, because it's something that they have been doing their whole lives. And as they look into the future, they may see themselves having an even greater role as caregivers. They're also coaches, cheerleaders, and maybe even antagonists, as I've put here. I often do a presentation with Stephanie Melodzik, who is our grant writer, and she has a disability, and she loves to talk about how her siblings, as she was growing up, were her antagonists. She kind of, she says her siblings kind of teased her into doing greater things than she would have done on her own. So those are some of the reasons that we do it. Do put an emphasis on siblings and what they need. There's a lot of challenges of having a sibling with a disability, and there are a lot of joys. And so we do a lot of celebration as we even look into the future. And we have a program that we call Journey Forward. And there's a lot of overlaps with the program that Stephanie and Anne were talking about too, where you really get a chance to meet other siblings, other adult siblings, and you start asking the questions and asking the questions of your parents, asking the questions of caregivers, asking the questions of yourselves of what's our dream? Not only my dream as a sibling perhaps, but my sibling's dream, my parents, what's our nightmare? And what are the little things that make a difference? I remember one of our siblings in the program was talking about how important it was that her sister be surrounded by lots and lots of greeting cards, cards that she'd get at Christmas, cards that she'd get at her birthday. Not only did she like to see those cards coming in the mail, but then she kept those cards and she loved to sort through her cards. And that was always going to be important to her. So she wanted to be sure that that was written down as something that was going to support her sister. And by supporting her sister, she was feeling the support as well. We are located in Appleton, but we reach out and we have other people reach out to us all the time. So anywhere in Wisconsin, we can provide support. We can provide information. We can provide you with programming and that type of outreach. So check out our website, send me an email. We'd be happy to help. So I'm going to stop share and get back to all of you. I really appreciate being here, not only as that aging parent, but as the executive director of WisconSibs. As a parent, it's comforting to know that you all are there as support, that my daughter is there. And I agree with Anne. Our interest was not laying this on our daughter. Knowing my daughter, if we expected her to do something, she'd want to do the opposite. But also, self-determination is not just for people with disabilities. Self-determination is for everyone. And so very early, when she was 7 years old, and she asked me, when you and Daddy die, am I taking care of Philip? And I was surprised that she asked that question at such an early age. But I had the good fortune of having thought through this. And so my immediate answer to her was, your daddy and I are making plans in the future so that you always have a choice. And I heard Anne say that too. Maybe they have a lot of life insurance, and we do too, so that there is something there that makes it possible for Philip's care. But also it makes it possible for Christiana to have a choice in her role and a choice in the options that she has in caring for Philip in any way that works for her. And that's probably the most important thing to us as parents, is to make sure our children have choices and the freedom to make those choices. So thanks again for inviting me to participate in your panel.
Right, I want to piggyback on that comment, and I apologize. I turned on my angel lighting while I was off camera, so apologies for that. But I think one thing that is interesting, or that I often say to parents, right? Because I appreciate both you and Anne talking with your other children about their role as siblings in the future. A lot of families are terrified to have that conversation and almost see it as if I know they're going to say no, I don't want to hear about it. But universally, right, that is something that if you are a parent of someone with a disability, your other kids have thought about this, they've worried about it, they've wondered about it. And so they are, no matter what the circumstances are, they're going to welcome the conversation. And from my own personal experience, I would say, don't wait until there's a crisis to tell them what you need from them, right? If I had known ahead of time what my parents were going to ask me to do, it probably wouldn't have changed anything, but man, it sure would have been easier to have gotten the therapy I was going to need prior to that happening rather than afterwards.
So true, Stephanie. That is the number one thing we hear from siblings is they haven't done anything because they didn't know what the parents wanted, and parents are afraid to ask the kids. So it's this dance that it's hard to get started. And my advice is start somewhere, and definitely talk with your kids, and siblings, talk to your parents. And when we do the Journey Forward program, and it's for us, it's been an in-person workshop. So we haven't done any since the pandemic, but that's one of the primary things we help parents do and siblings do is to have a forum where they can talk with one another without being nervous about it, and without holding the fear of that. We just get into it, and in a gracious, loving way. But it's so important. And the other is, if you have spoken, that's great, and write things down. That letter of intent that we have with Journey Forward, and that you use with your program too, Stephanie, that's a great place to start off. Start writing things down, and it's amazing how that can make that conversation just happen naturally. So it doesn't matter where you start. Maybe it's the medical stuff, maybe it's the financial stuff, maybe it's the legal. It doesn't matter. Just start. Just start. That's the key, so that you can be prepared for the future and not have to deal with a crisis to be prepared.
And your kids are probably waiting for you to bring it up, right?
It definitely, yeah. The kids are waiting, and the parents are waiting, and it's just somebody has to stick their toe in the water. And here's a fact. 80% of people think they've made a plan. 80% of parents think they have made a plan. They may have gotten started, and that's good. Planning never stops. But of those 80% who have made a plan, 60% of their siblings have no idea what it is. And parents, and I'm guilty of this too, you may have shared something, maybe casually, but you may have shared it in a way that they weren't prepared to listen yet, or they didn't hear it. And so a one-time shot is not enough. It really takes an ongoing, open conversation that is safe for parents, safe for siblings to hear. It's not always easy, but it's important, and making it safe to share thoughts and dreams and ideas is really the key.
think that's such an important message, Harriet. Thank you for everybody for coming on today to talk about it and to have this conversation. I think too, right now with the pandemic, we've been talking a lot about social isolation for people with disabilities and self-advocates, but I think too, we should be sure to say that like family members, siblings, parents, they're feeling the social isolation as well. And I think Love Inc. and Wisconsin is a great place to start to connect with people who are probably experiencing things that are, or, oh, I froze up for a second. Am I back? Did it come back?
Yep, I was just about to jump in.
Okay.
Yeah, you were frozen.
Yeah, it froze up. Anyway, I was just saying, and I'll say it quickly because I think it'll probably freeze, that even if you're at the beginning stages of making a plan, reaching out, finding some support is a good place to start. And Wisconsin's and Love Inc. are both great places to do that. All right, I want to just thank Stephanie Prim and Ann Karchbook from Love Inc. and Harriet Redmond from Wisconsin for joining us today. We really appreciate this conversation. And we're not going to be live next week because it's the day before Thanksgiving, but we're going to make sure that some self-determination channel videos are up for people to watch and share. And we'll definitely be back the first week of December with more Living Well Wednesdays live. And again, all of the links for Love Inc. and Wisconsin's are in the chat. So please reach out to them or to us with questions and ways to get connected, and we'll help you do that. Thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Thanks, Caitlin.